Today, do we have an important video for you? And yes, we are chasing the meta right now, the new meta with a new tier list for the Crons, and we are joined by the one, the only, Daniel. He's back, and I figured we have him on today, talk about some Necrons, what we think the new meta means for our detachments, our units, what is looking good, what's looking bad. So without further ado, yeah, let's get into it. How you doing, Daniel?
Pretty good. Got back from Onslaught, had some good games, and it's fun.
Some good practice, you know.
Yeah, got a top cron. Did not get top player, but it's all right. Working.
Hey, it's all right, man.
Better.
It's all right. You know,
Yep.
all practice is good practice. So
at least it wasn't Star Shatter. That's what I care about.
True. Well, without further ado, man, let's freaking get into it. You know, I intentionally put the freaking Triarch stalker here up top because Daniel shares a really fond love for this unit here. And we figured we'd start it off. I wanted to clarify that our ranking system today, so every list is as it sounds. We think there are these certain specific units that should be in every list in the current meta right now. Detachment staple is whether you're playing Awaken, Star Shatter, or Canoptic Court, or Hypercrypt. These units specifically are going to be like a focal point of that detachment. Next up, we think about need some help. So essentially units that probably not going to see much play in the meta right now. Just either their points are too high or they just don't match up in a lot of armies right now, and they're just probably not worth taking. And then the fun with friends units, they're just, unfortunately, they've just been bad data sheets this whole edition, and we're just like, yeah, cool. And maybe that actually kind of fits into maybe an 11th edition as well. We could play some of these units. So there'll be a couple down there as well. But yeah, without further ado, let's get to the Stalker. I feel like we could probably both agree that this is going to be a detachment staple, specifically.
I agree. It's almost borderline in every list, I think, because of the fact that it's like such a cheap model in terms of what it does. You know, it's a 4-up invul and stat check with OK Flamer and OK Melta, but it's Melta 4. It's got toughness 8, 12 wounds. It scout moves. But detachment staple is probably pretty good because I think it's just better in Star Shatter, especially if you want to give it like -1 damage and then just have it go in mid board. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, like I was talking about in my recent deployment breakdown for Star Shatter, like I feel like a really good combo when you're using that chrono impedance fields, especially because if you are running the king, or maybe if you're not running the king, but if you specifically are, a lot of times you're not exposing him turn 1. So, you know, getting max value out of that enhancement and passing it over to like a Triarch Stalker turn 1 and having them to, you know, commit real resources early on that sucker, I think you get a lot of value out of it. So
I agree. And with how the model is, the arms, keep in mind, right, you can't like model for advantage, right? But the arms do go out, right? And you can't change it mid-game how you have it at the start of the game. So remember that you can't like just take the arms inside it, but then when you need an extra inch, you can't just put them out there. That's cheating.
Yeah.
If you have them out, something I like to do is when I ran Star Shatter for like 2 weeks, I had the spider that would go into the little crevice of like map 1, for example, would go into the crevice of the terrain right there to be within 6 inches of the spider. And then I would have the spider be -1 damage, and I would have it go touch the little objective in no man's land, and I'd let them come forward if they want to. I had a rampager go into it one time. I think it's called a rampager. It's like close combat chaos knight.
Yep.
And he did like 3 wounds to it. or 4 wounds to it because I made 4-up invulns. I fell back, and then 3 doomsday arks said, hey, there's 400 points gone from your list. So
yeah, the 4-up invulns, man. I mean, especially like in a pinch. I mean, granted, the strat is 2 CP for -1 a wound, but in a pinch, if you like read the board right and it makes sense, like I mean, he can just be super annoying to get rid of.
It was also when Star Shatter was good for 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Said, hey, it's coming up. So
yeah,
but I agree. The detachment staple is good.
Well, let's move on to the unit that we are super hyped about, and that is the Warriors themselves. I think they are here to stay in the old detachment staple.
Yeah. I can't say they should be in every list because if you like to have an optic court, it, you probably do a little gimmick and have them with a cryptic, and then have them infiltrate. But then you have to have like a deceiver, so it's really just like 600 plus points just to do something funny. Um, but hypercrypt, warrior brick with reapers and a plasmancer coming down and doing 25 wounds to something possibly is just kind of like really demeaning for your opponent. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously the awakened warrior brick of doom that doesn't die after 40,000 reanimations over a turn. It's super clutch. So
Yeah.
100%, you could definitely have this in any detachment that specifically though hypercrypt and awakened. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think with the Warriors too, I think you're going to start seeing them a lot more in the meta. I mean, we could be wrong, but I think just based on like early playtesting, especially against like DACA and stuff as well, I think it's our one relatively good counter to that style of list, just because you have really strong board control, and there's ways to play around that with the Warriors. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it unfolds.
Especially
Sure.
since if you look at the Onslaught Imperial Knights one and
Mm-hmm.
Cherokee Imperial Knights one, well, Imperial Knights don't kill many warriors, so definitely super useful. As long as you can't just run 20 warriors. Don't run 10 warriors because that's just not smart,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But
You,
you need characters to add to that warrior brick to make them useful,
yeah.
which those characters will get to in the future. So
Yeah, which we'll definitely talk about. And then I think the first one on the docket, the flayed ones themselves.
yeah,
Every list right now, every
I
freaking
agree.
list, y'all. Yeah, this is our only answer to stop any sort of jail rush. We're talking about DACA, especially with Zodrog and 20 Gretchen. You're going to see that unit in pretty much every list. I mean, you talk about your Votan with freaking Sagittars. I mean, you talk about, I mean, all Gene Stealers, right? With freaking Broodlords.
World Eaters.
Yeah, I mean, they're
World Eaters have no
there's
infiltrate, so
yeah, so there's so many problem units that just by having a 60-point unit of flayed ones that infiltrate is huge value. And the fact that like how many armies would kill to have a 60-point infiltrating units, they're so cheap. The one unit I'm surprised they did not go up maybe like 5 points in the slate,
I
but
think they used to be, if I'm remembering right, the start of 10th
I think
edition.
they're
I
like
think they,
75 or 70.
yeah,
I
I think they
think.
were 70.
Yeah.
The only thing I could really, the only thing I wish they would do for flight ones personally, right, is, and I give them a point up increase if they want. There's one detachment that everyone just laughs at, and that's Annihilation Legion. And
Yeah.
you could make flayed ones battle line if they are within Annihilation Legion. That's my only regret about where flayed ones are at. But besides that, especially if you're going to run Triarch Stalkers or Tomb Blades, I do not run anything with Scout if I don't have Infiltrate. So if you
Hmm.
run Scout of any type, you better be running 5 flayed ones, or else just be prepared to spend points on Scout movements that you don't get to ever use.
Yep. It's gonna be a rough time. It's gonna be a rough time. The Triarch, or no, these are Lychguard with Sice, I believe. Yes. Maybe
Uh,
the
I think
I did I don't know. I mean, do you think
need some help. I think need some help.
they
They're
need some
not
help?
bad. You don't have any access to fight first in the army, like anywhere. Like nothing has fight first in the army. You
Yeah.
have no access to advance and charge in the army, like Necrons. Period. So for being a hard hitting close combat unit that no longer has access to the 4-up invuln from Orikan joining the unit, um, I would, if I'm gonna run Lychguard, they're not gonna have those. That's my take.
I feel like Lychguard just in general right now are just kind of in a little bit of a tough spot. It's hard to figure out a way to make them their work. I love the models; they look so cool, but um, yeah, they're just kind of in a tough spot.
Yeah, if they could allow, I mean, I don't
They
know.
move slow. The 5-inch move. There's really no access to advance. I
I see
mean,
them in some lists though. Like some people make them work. Like the Overlord attachment's not bad to have 1 or 2 units with shields.
yeah,
But besides that, especially if we look at like what the meta is right now, and I think Daka 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 is gonna be a problem, right? Well, the
Yeah, it's
problem is
all the 2 damage. It's just
everything's 2 damage.
yeah.
Everything is, and it's just like, who cares if you have -1 to wound when you're getting 40 hits, wounding on 3s to 4s. So
Yep.
not worth it.
Yep. Death marks probably in the same category. I feel like. I mean,
Attachment staple, in my opinion, and here's the reason why. And you can put them where you believe. Maybe towards the end of attachment staple, because there's a level of things. If you need, especially with weird things going up in points like scarabs and the locust destroyer, or the locust destroyer, hexmarks are 75 points. They've gone up in points, right? And so if you don't have points for another hexmark, right? Because I think every hypercrypt should have at least 1 hexmark, if not 2 to 3, because they're so good at scoring. Death marks are that little, only in hypercrypt, are a good little, hey, they have deep strikes, so they can go up and come back down. They do have cool mechanics against like Gene Stealer Cult and stuff like that, where if they come down from reserves, you get to snipe the characters of the unit, hitting on 2s, right? Because they stood still for your turn, or for your opponent's turn. That's just my opinion. Anything else but hypercrypt, I do agree, need some help. But they are cheap points. They have toughness 5. Their strength of their guns 5. It's 5-2-2 with precision. Hypercrypt has a point.
I feel like a lot of times though, like especially when sniping out characters, I mean GSC is a good example because I mean their characters are relatively squishy, but the majority of characters in the game, like you're not gonna be able to drop 1 unit death marks down and get like legit good damage through. And it's like at that point, I almost look at them in my head where it's like, yeah, they're a nice like drop in scoring piece, but then at that point, it's like I'd rather spend like 10 more points just to get a hexmark that I think can provide some different type of or better utility. One, because it's a smaller footprint and he's lone op, so it's harder to screen out, and when he does drop in, you prevent the overwatch threat. And then the second thing is Ophidians that are kind of fulfilling the same role, and granted, yes, it is 15 points more, but having the value to screen in your backfield early game and then drop them in late game. I feel like Deathmark's like in this weird spot where it's like I would rather take those 2 other units rather than Deathmarks in most lists. But I mean, I don't know.
I hear you, and I think that they could go and need some help. Here's a question though: what would you do to give them help?
I would probably make them cheaper.
Can't really go much. Whether they are 65, 60,
because it's like
60.
they're not gonna change their data sheet. So it's like either they increase the hexmark back up to like 80 points, which would be kind of rough, and then it makes the death marks I think a little bit more attractive at that point.
Bring them back down to 60. I could see that, or make each of their shots 2. Yeah, I can see them. Yeah, put them down to need some help, but
because I think they just fall in the category of like the main role that they're fulfilling. It's like I feel like 2 other units that just do it a little bit better.
That's fair, and like for points purposes, you could probably bring two locust destroyers. And
yeah, I mean that too. Yeah, it's another good example. I feel like. Speaking of locust destroyers.
Oh yeah. I don't think they're needed in every list.
I mean,
they are atop of the detachment staple, I think. I mean, if you have, it used to be like if you had 30 points left over, you put them in, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many times, like you saw it when I was updating my list after the doomsday arks went up by just 10 points, right? Like hitting me, right? But like,
yeah, you'll cut one of those,
Yeah, but like now it's 35 points. It's such an awkward point cost, right? Where it's like if I have 35 points, I probably have 40, and there's a unit that's 40 points that I am gonna think that goes in every list that we'll talk about later. So I mean, if you have 35, yeah, I guess you could put them in every list, right? If you have the points for it. I would personally, if I have the extra 5 points, I would just probably want this other unit that happens, not foreshadowing, right? But it's 40 points, you can probably guess. That's my thought. But what's your thought?
Like I get it. I mean, I love them. I'm running like 3 of them in my current list just because I do really like Scarabs and they fulfill a similar role, but I feel like sometimes, obviously giving them the OC, it requires like positional requirements, and then sometimes it can get a little messy mid game if they're not within, and like Locust destroyers, you don't even have to worry about that, which is kind of nice because they just have their OC. You drop them in. You know, I've had ones where you like just drop them in where you don't have like a side objective on like, you know, when you're within 6, you can drop them on one of those no man's objectives and you get an easy cleanse or an easy extend battle lines or secure or like whatever it is. But I could see him still in detachment staple because like there are, I think it does depend on like how what your list looks like towards the end and what you're kind of filling the points with because we have a couple different options there. But I would rank them pretty high on detachment staple. Like they're like right there.
I agree, and I think it's because
list.
of what you said is why I would not put him in every list, and that's the fact of, especially in a competitive tournament, right?
Yep.
It's so hard to truly score points sometimes, right?
Yep.
Where I don't want to give my opponent an easy 35-point model that they can get overwhelming force, no prisoners, storm hostile objectives so simply, right?
True.
Now, scarabs are easy to kill. I hear you there, but like 12 wounds, right? Like you saw when I played your buddy, he charged it with Ludas into the scarabs. And even after I popped one, he still left one with 2 wounds with a unit of Ludas at full health. Well, no,
Yep.
minus the 2 I killed with the mortals, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm always thinking about scoring, right? Because that's what I'm trying to think. High on detachment staple, 100%.
Yep.
I think when I think of every list, it's things that I'm going to put in every list, no matter what. And honestly, for the last couple months, I haven't had a locust destroyer in my list, and it's because I run scarabs. And then
Yep.
usually, think about the last like however many lists that you've ran, Kylan. When was the last time you didn't have a cryptic? Right? Like you can always give them OC, especially in Awaken, right?
Oh,
It's so
yeah,
nice
Awaken
to
for sure.
have that illuminor just
Szeras,
run.
yeah. Yeah.
I ran 3 scarabs at onslaught and I missed running 6. And that's one of the things I'm going to change most recently is I need to have 6 scarabs. Not 1 mana 6, I don't agree with that, but 2 3-mans is super good, especially with how mobile armies are. You think about the Gretchen scouting and then advancing and charging into you turn 1. Well, you can put 6 scarabs in front of them and have them charge into that, and they'll probably kill 1, if 2, maybe, and then you'll actually probably kill some of the Gretchen with the scarabs. So
It's true. Yeah, a lot of volume attacks, yeah. For sure. They are great. They serve a lot of purposes for sure. Imotekh.
You take the lead on this one. I want to hear what you think about this one.
Yeah, he is kind of in a weird spot. I mean, you've been seeing some lists run him recently that have been doing well. I mean, if anything, I would probably put him at the bottom of detachment staple. I think with the current changes to Star Shatter, with the 2 CP for +1 wound and -1 wound on both those strats, where you can't just be like, you know, spamming that button every turn. You know, having Imotekh is kind of nice, but at the same time, it is 100 points. I mean, and he's most of the time going to be chilling in your backfield. So I don't know. I mean, he's kind of like either in the top and needs some help or detachment staple because you're not really going to see him in Awaken. Doesn't really make much sense. I mean, you're not going to see him in Annihilation Legion. I don't know. He's kind of in a weird spot right now. Definitely not going to see him in every list. I'll say that, but probably bottom of detachment staple, maybe specifically for Star Shatter.
Yeah, I think the only attachments that I would run him in, honestly, is going to be either Star Shatter, semi-hypercrypt, which I'll explain in a second, and the Overlord attachment, right? Have him with a unit of
Phalanx,
Lychguard and whatever. It does give you the extra CP. Here's the thing, though. I think it's too often that you have secondaries you just can't score anyways, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm gonna get CP anyways. Now he, in terms of getting and gathering the CP, he is like second best, I think, personally, behind probably Ultramarines in regards to how much CP you can get. Because it's automatic, right? You get it no matter what. Ultramarines just get it and extra stuff, right? But if I'm going to run Hypercrypt, for example, because, you know, I was running 20 warriors with the Plasmancer and I had another 20 warrior brick with Orikan, I'm going to have an Overlord in that unit instead. And the reason why is because it gives me a free strat, so I don't really need the CP for him anyways. I don't need the CP for Imotekh. Like, it's useful sometimes. I guess you can have it, right? So you can do a 6-inch deep strike and you have next turn if you need it, right? But I just there's an Overlord does better, right? It's just like, hey, he's cheaper, he gives extra abilities, and he has a Resorb. So whatever unit you're gonna have him in anyways, like whether it's Lychguard, Warriors, Immortals, I get to bring back up to 6 models at any time. Or well, 6 wounds, right? So
Yep.
Lychguard are the only things that are in our army that's infantry that has 2 wounds. So besides
Yep.
characters, but
Oh, we lost him. We lost him. 1 sec here. We'll get him back here.
there we go.
Oh, there we go. He's back. He's back.
Yeah.
I
agree with you.
No,
100%.
all good points. All good points.
I agree with you 100%. Almost needs some help, but there's really nothing. I feel like if we put him in,
There's nothing wrong with him.
Yeah, it's just being
yeah.
greedy. Like he's a good character. He does his little electric boom at the end as a end of a command phase or whatever. Super useful. But besides that, no, I 100% agree with you. Bottom, and then depending on what we see in the future, he might even go down and need some help.
The Hexmark Destroyer.
I put him in front of Flayed ones.
You put him in front of Flayed ones?
I truly do.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So here's the reason why for that, right? Flayed ones are good because they stop the scout and infiltration thing, right? But they're not always going to play against people who have scout and infiltration, right?
True.
Hexmarks have lone op, all right? Usually the best enhancements we have in the game goes on a Hexmark, all right? The one that's like, I think it's like -1 damage in Star Shatter, would you put on a Hexmark? The extra up and down and hypercrypt you put on a Hexmark. The well, recently the Veil of Darkness on a Hexmark I think is super clutch. People don't give enough respect to. And I ran 2. I'm running 2. I probably won't run less than 2. And it's because turn 1, I'm able to put 1 right next to my deployment zone right before, I can either score containment or I can score cleanse, especially in Awakened, right? In Awakened, even if you do move him up and he somehow gets killed, you have to remember he's lone up, right? What's really getting to him turn 1? Even if they have, but don't get me wrong, again, Flayed ones and Hexmarks are in the same list, right? But if I had to choose between one and the other, Hexmarks have the great Overwatch. They have they are cheap for what they do. You can bring them back to life and Awaken. They have a small footprint, just like you said, in regards to them versus Deathmarks. And the problem with Flayed ones, for me personally, is again that scoring thing where it's like they are useful for a lot of the stopping stuff, but they also give you turn 1 of them scoring no prisoners, them scoring, whatever. If they need to get engaged in all fronts and you have them there, they can slingshot off of the Flayed ones, right? There's always risks of what Flayed ones are. Still useful. Don't get rid of Flayed ones. But that's still the reason why I'm thinking Hexmarks in front. But I could definitely see where they're pretty much the same. Honestly, they're the same. I just like seeing Hexmark in front.
Yeah.
I think the Hexmark's one of my favorite models. So that's pretty much it.
No, he's cool. I mean, he's definitely like the tricks of all trade. He's like the ultimate utility piece. It's 1A, 1B. I think, if we're like strictly making this tier list as far as like competitive meta and what we really think are gonna, see in lists over the next 3 months, I feel like the only reason I would rank Flayed ones higher than a Hexmark is just because the Flayed ones solve like one of the biggest problems in terms of like stopping the rush. And by like just not having Flayed ones in your list, like it could literally just be an auto lose for you.
Basically. I do agree. And I will tell anyone who's watching that if you're making a list to be competitive, you need to have both Flayed ones and a Hexmark. That should be your first 2 starting points, right? I do like the Flayed ones. If you're below half strength, everything's a sustained hit. That is super clutch.
Good. So good.
Especially in Star Shatter, that is super, super goated. Because if they're on an objective, now 2s up, right, are all sustained hits. Out of 20 hits, you're looking at probably, especially with rerolls, right? You're looking at like 40 hits and then twin linked, right?
It's crazy.
You can use +1 to wound on them, which is wild. But you put Hexmark where you think. I'm not going to disagree with you. I like both.
No, we'll just say they're 1A, 1B.
They're brothers. They love each other.
All right, we got a special shout out for the Monolith. All right, it may, I didn't rank it too highly last tier list, but I think there may be some validity to the old Monolith here, potentially.
I'm gonna let you do this one.
Dude, okay, so detachment. It's probably gonna need some more testing because we got DACA coming around here, and we'll see pending any FAQ or anything like that. But hey, that's the reality of the situation, and tank busters would just absolutely love to go into this thing, and I would just say that I don't. So previously in Hypercrypt, what you used to see is like people would either run like the Satan builds without the monolith, and we'll talk about this later, but I think Satans are just not in a good spot at all right now with some of the changes. And so, like, with that said, I think obviously Monolith is going to be going in the Hypercrypt build, so we're talking about Hypercrypt specifically. And I think if you skew towards, a Monolith build, bring one of them, maybe potentially two of them, that could be a very good combo in this meta. I don't think the Monolith necessarily needs some help. I mean, it'd be kind of nice if it went down in points maybe a little bit, but, maybe 400 is still like a good spot. But, I think you are going to see it as if people want to run Hypercrypt, you're going to see a Monolith, I think.
Yeah, I mean, right, if you run Hypercrypt, I think it depends.
If you run like the double T-Volt, like Silent King craziness,
So when Necrons won LVO last year with the Monolith and Immortals, right? People could basically take the Monolith and add it to the list and run it with what they liked, right? Whether you were running Immortals or Warriors or Lychguard or Wraiths or whatever, right? There's always something you could do with the Monolith. But it was also 350 points, right? Like it was 350 points where it was like, hey, I could come down and do this. And it was also 3-inch deep strike, right? Don't forget the guy won LVO because there was a 3-inch deep strike. He was able to get back there. That's not happening now, right? So now it's is it 400 points? Is it 420? I forgot. I think it's
400 points. Yeah,
400
I think it's
points.
400 even. Yeah.
It's a lot of points, and I have seen too many times personally. CSM Vindicator take it out in one go, right? And then that's 400 points out of your list from a 185 point model, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that just because something can die, you shouldn't run it. But I do think that with the meta being, it seems to be Imperial Knights and orcs with tank busters and stuff like that. There's too much stuff, I think, that kills vehicles so easily. Where for starters, let's just get this out of the way. If you're running any other detachment that's not Hypercrypt, don't run a Monolith. That's funny. You do that with friends. That's fun for friends. Do that in like apocalypse games, right? But you do need the CP for the 4-up Inbone. And by the way, when it died to the Vindicator, it had a 4-up Inbone. Didn't matter. Scourges for Dark Eldar, they can kill it in one go. Tank Busters 100% can kill it in one go. So for me, detachment staple 100%. If you're gonna run infantry or some form of thing that can benefit from the strats that can go through it and be sucked to it if it loses a model, I agree. Detachment staple. It definitely needs some help though. I would say it probably needs more help than Imotekh because Imotekh's still a good character. The Monolith is just, I think the 6-inch deep strike really hurt it because it's not so simple just to land wherever you want it to now. And the point increases really hurts it. And not to mention, don't forget, everything nowadays has a 4-up invuln, but the Monolith. Yeah. And so all of its guns, like, it's 4 shots, D3 sustain, so it's a lottery cannon. If you have rerolls, shout out to Ulyss with the Silent King, you can get the additional possibilities of getting your just sustained hits. But it doesn't matter when you only kill one Custode Warden because he had rolled 3 4-ups. So, yeah, that's my take. Yeah. I agree, though. Detachment staple, right? If you're running Hypercrypt and you run like Warriors or Immortals, you should run the Monolith because it's just like it's too useful.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, how everything with Hypercrypt shakes out with the new meta and some of these new detachments coming into play. Because I think there are just some, like you said, I mean, there's some really lethal combos where you just lose the Monolith like instantaneously. So we'll have to see what happens there. But we got Daniel back, man. He's He's
It doesn't
he's
like
in
the
and out here, guys.
Trailblazers. It doesn't like my shirt. Man.
Literally, man. Too soon, man. Too soon. Let's go. So we got the Overlord himself. Sadly, actually, on this one, I'm just noticing they don't have some of the
that's
the newer ones.
That's the special edition Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll do this one. So we'll just talk about like Overlord and Translocation Overlord, like just in general. You know, he's definitely going to be detachment staple. I think there's pros and cons to each. I think it just depends on your list in terms of like anti-tank. So like if you're looking at a combo where you really need that Void Blade or whatever for the strength 12 and Awaken's kind of nice because you can give it +1 strength, +1 EP, and going up to strength 13 and being able to wound even like big knights on a 3 is pretty cool, or just like a lot of big objects. But I know Daniel and I are pretty high on the Translocation Shroud Overlord right now, just because.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna look up his stats because I haven't ran him since the start of edition.
Oh, there you go.
Translocation Overlord hasn't or came out when the Codex came out.
Yeah, I mean the Translocation, he just provides just so much utility because he's still giving the CP reduction. He still gives you a decent weapon at strength 8. He's got 4 attacks. He's going to be hitting on 2s and Awaken. He's with Dev Wounds, which is pretty nice. And then just the auto 6 advance that counts towards your move characteristic, and then on the other benefit is that it counts as being able to move through enemy models. So even if you get like wrapped, you need to like fall back, you can still like fall through or fall back through enemy models, which is really nice as well. Overlord definitely right now, Translocation Shroud, whether you're running Phalanx, you're running Awakened, potentially even Star Shatter, if you want to have him as like the enhancement carry, he's going to be a detachment staple for sure. So
yeah. Do you want to add the Translocation as well, and then I'll talk about both of them, I guess.
They don't have it on here, sadly.
Oh no!
Which I didn't notice till later.
We can use the special edition Lord then. One with the
all right, we use the special edition Lord. Boom.
Yep. All right. So for starters, I think the Translocation Lord goes in front of the other one.
Yeah. Or maybe we put this one down here. Maybe
the Translocation Lord.
No. This is just the regular Overlord.
Oh, that's it. That's the one up top.
Oh.
Yeah. I agree with that one right there. I think that the Translocation Overlord is just better. Same points. The auto advance 6. So if you're gonna run Lychguard, right? They both do the same thing in regards to being a noble in your unit that gives them the -1 to wound. But they allow your slow Lychguard to move faster. They both give the free strat. The only difference between their own personal rules is that the base Overlord is -1 damage to incoming attacks, and it's like you're not going to put the 4 Final Pain enhancement on him in Awaken, so it's kind of just like it doesn't really matter. And I just think that the Translocation Lord, especially with like, for example, Gretchen being able to get in your face turn 1, if you need to move over them, you can with the Translocation Overlord. If you need to auto advance and move through enemy models, I think he's just better. The only thing I do like the Overlord for is its 3 damage, which the Catacomb Command Barge Overlord doesn't do that. Neither does the Translocation Overlord. But I do think that that's the right thing there. And I do also think that the Translocation Overlord is just a specific unit away from being in every list, because I think he's useful in almost every unit. Like if you think about it, right, when Canoptic Court first came out and everyone was running Immortals with Mortal Spam, he was super goated then because he gave the Tesla Immortals auto advance 6. You could just fly across the board. Rest in peace, Canoptic Court. But yeah, great.
Yeah. Yep, good stuff. The Locust Lord, I would say detachment staple as well. I mean, don't have to maybe go like super in depth on this guy, but mostly see him in Star Shatter. I think there's some play in Awakened, potentially see people like running like Imotekh and stuff with him. I'm not really like a huge fan of that idea, but I think, especially in Star Shatter, I think there's a place for him. Not super high on him, but I think I don't think he needs help. I think he's got good rules. He's, I think, appropriately costed. So
I think if you run him in Awaken, you give him the Veil of Darkness with EEs to counter the Luda and the Tank Buster threat. Even against Chaos Knights, they wound on 5s. They don't get the rerolls, but you're still looking at doing 8 to 10 wounds at AP -1.
into knights because of the fact that they straight 6. Yeah, that's a great thing. And if you run them in Hypercrypt, you give them the Arisen Tyrant if you're not running the Plasmancer with the Warrior Brick. But I would just run the Plasmancer with the Warrior Brick because you're looking at more wounds into more things like a Chaos Demon.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. We have the Command Barge, also probably going to be a detachment staple, you know.
I love the barge. I love it so much. It's so useful in multiple different detachments. So that's what I think makes it better than a lot of other things. The Triarch Stalker also probably needs to get moved up again.
Yeah, we'll move him up.
The Catacomb Command Barge, right? What makes the Warrior Brick so good, in my opinion, is having that ability to make them OC3, or even if you're battle shocked, OC1 around everything or near you. So even if you have him in your backfield, you'll never lose your backfield as long as there's nothing on it, because he'll have OC1 always. He has another Resorb, so you can help out your Locust destroyers. If you're playing against orcs and you have to worry about them shooting your EEs when you get close, right? They shouldn't kill all of them with Overwatch, but I mean, who knows? Because orcs are just really wild right now. But you can always use a Resorb on him if you're not using the Locust Lord. He's a super useful dude. And even if you have him with the 4 Affinal Pain, he's also he's very good, right? He's very good with the 4 Affinal Pain. I would put him on probably a Scorpekh Lord at this point now. But you run him in Star Shatter, you give him the rerolls, ones to hit, ones to wound, and then you have Ignore Mods with the Silent King. It's a cool little duo package there. And yeah, probably run him in Annihilation Legion too, just to bring back Scorpekh.
I mean, he's I think it just goes back to, I mean, he's a solid unit with a solid data sheet. He's got good rules. I think he's a lot more attractive now because his points went down. I think he started the edition at like 140, 150. Now he's down to like cheap. 120. So
super cheap.
He's pretty cheap for what he does, and I think that's why you're seeing him a lot more in lists coming up here, especially over the next 3 months. So now we got the T-Volt. The T-Volt, man. I mean, it doesn't need help, but I feel like it's just kind of in that Monolith category where, yes, it's a detachment staple. I think if you are running Hypercrypt, you're going to see one of these two things in there. The data sheet doesn't really need help. Maybe they need like a points adjustment, but it's tough to say if these units are really going to flourish in the current meta, because we got a couple lethal combos out there of being Aeldari and orcs, which are super popular armies as it is, and it's tough to say how these type of units are really going to hold up.
The Vault slaps though.
Like, it does. I'm right there with you, man.
It kills a whole unit of Ludas. Like the Tesla.
It does.
People sleep on that Tesla. It's 24 shots, double sustained 6s. You know, you have the Silent King nearby. You're re-rolling 1s. You're wounding orcs on 3s because it's straight 7. You're wounding most Custode units, infantry on 3s because it's just up to 6. It's super good. It's one of those things I was talking about earlier. If you run infantry, you run the Monolith. If you don't run a lot of infantry in Hypercrypt, you run the Vault because it's a stat check of great ability of coming down and sniping a character. I mean, you could do Tesla shots into a demon and probably do about 6 to 7 wounds with all the Tesla shots. Then you do 6 mortal wounds with this anti-character shot. It's just super good. In the right detachment. Do not run it. I mean, it did win a GT a couple months ago, you know, in Canoptic Court, which was wild.
We're not saying it's bad. It's not bad.
Not bad.
It's a good unit. It's still a good unit.
Super good, and it's super beautiful. I think you can see it behind me over there, actually. Super cool model. It's not even a fun with friends model, too, because if you played against your friends, they'll probably not like you ever again, because you'll kill their favorite
it's true.
model.
No, it's a legit unit. It's a good data sheet. It's strong. It's super strong. Heavy destroyers. So we got the Imotekh, and we're just gonna lump these together. So it's the Imotekh and the anti-tank weapons. I think they're also a detachment staple, but probably down towards this direction, or no? Maybe like here.
They're probably above in my opinion, the Catacomb Command Barge. Simply for the fact that they do 6 flat damage for the big cannons, right? And a lot of,
and it is nice in Star Shatter because you could you were seeing people run them in like units of 1. You just like drop them in. You're like, cool, I'm hitting on 2s, and then potentially wounding on 2s and just like AP 4 flat 6, you're like,
And that's the other thing too. If we're thinking about the meta, right, in terms of infantry heavy meta with Eldar and orcs, right? Like if you run 2 or 3 of them as singles in reserves,
super good.
it's like, hey, I'm gonna bring this down and ask your opponent, you want to overwatch it? Are they gonna overwatch a single Locust heavy destroyer? Probably not.
Yeah.
Then you're just gonna bring out another one anyways if they do. And a single Locust destroyer at sustained hits, right, into a unit of Ludos will probably pick up 5 or 6, and then they're no longer a threat to most of your stuff. That unit.
Yep.
Orcs are still a threat, but that unit.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
for sure.
I love.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna see the Imotekh a little bit more pop up. I think in lists with especially with Eldar and orcs. Over the next 3 months, they're just gonna be so popular in the meta. They're those two armies. No matter what detachment they're playing, you go into a tournament, a 5-rounder, you're gonna play at least Eldar or orcs once, pretty much. I feel like guaranteed one of those.
I do also worry that because of the nerfs to Bridgehead, tank spams are going to be even bigger, and unless they're running the right character, their tanks aren't going to have a 4-up invuln and then guard. And there's also a lot of Space Marine tanks that don't have invulns. So the 6 damage 2 is also not useless because it's just like, hey, here's AP -4, hitting you on 2s with a lot of different army rules that you can do, and then reroll in 1s to wound. Oh, you get no save, cool, take 6 damage, right? So yeah, super good both ways.
Scarabs, I already know they're probably gonna go right about here.
Nah, I put them behind Flayed ones.
You'd put them up every list.
I put them in every list. Well, because that's what I was saying in regards to between Locust destroyers and Scarabs. Now listen, Ulyss, our buddy, he was high on Scarabs. I didn't want to listen to him, right? I will not run another Necron list at any event. So if anyone wants to try to, in my area wants to try to play against me and beat me, just sure, prep for Scarabs, I guess. Like they're so good.
Yeah.
They're so small. They're 40 points. They can do 3 mortal wounds to a knight, and then possibly still do 1 more because of lethal attacks, right? They come back to life. They screen out. They're so useful. And again, right, the only problem that you have with them is the fact that they're swarms, so they can't fly through walls. Neither can a Locust destroyer, a single Locust destroyer. They also move faster than them. They can string out, so you have you have a pretty big footprint when you need it, and a very small one if you also need that. And in some detachments, I don't know what detachment you'd really run without a single cryptic in your list. So there's always an opportunity, right? Like illuminor is being ran in both hypercrypt and awakened, so you usually have him near them at least. That's just my opinion, though. I do think that they're super good. They're 40 points, and it's really like if you're gonna run a Locust destroyer, I might as well just find 5 points to run a Scarab unit. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I tried in my list, but I just couldn't. It was just 2,000 on the nose, and I'm like, well, that's just
if it happens.
The way it worked out.
Happens,
but otherwise, I probably would have one in there for sure. But yeah, I mean, they're great
list, but I do think that they should be in every list if you can afford them.
Yeah, and the 10-inch move is really good.
Yes,
that's a lifesaver for sure.
And being able to you have to remember too, the 3 bases, they're big bases, and you can screen them out. Like you make a pretty long line with them, and then you kill Eldar infantry with them pretty easily. They survive a charge attack from Ludas, so now they're goated in my opinion. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I feel like we need to fill up this need some help category.
Yeah. I think you could put all the Catans right there. We could probably think about what the order of operations are after. You have the Transcendent Catan too?
Nah, he's not on here, unfortunately.
Sad puppy.
Sorry, guys. I thought it kind of looked like everything was on here, but they get the idea. They get the idea.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, Satan are great. Their data sheets don't really need help. It's just kind of the way the meta is right now, kind of what we alluded to earlier, where we're going to see a lot of Eldar, we're going to see a lot of orcs, and unfortunately, those 2 armies are really happy when they see Satan and more or less on the battlefield, because you're just... Yeah, it's just it's an interesting problem to solve.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss the Nightbringer. Anyone who saw my stream knows that I did love the Nightbringer. He does do good.
I mean, If there is one you take, it's still him for sure.
Yeah. The problem is and when I Onslaught, for those who don't know, Onslaught's a 5-round event, so it's not as big as Cherokee, but it is 5 games. I always saw myself trading down with him. He's 305 points. Yes, he can kill stuff, but with everything having a 4-up invuln anyways, it's like, and there's a lot of -1 to hit in combat nowadays. So like if you're hitting on 3s, you're gonna miss probably 1 to 2 hits, unless you roll like me. Sometimes you get like 1 hit. No, and then you're wounding vehicles, like big vehicles, on 3s. And then they have a 4-up invuln, so at the end of the day, you end up maybe breaking even and doing enough wounds to kill a Chaos Knight, right?
Yeah.
But then you just get molly-watched by 15 Meltas the next turn, right? I never found myself... I charged into a Warden unit against Custodes, and he killed 1 Warden. It just happens. Like, sometimes he'll go in there and kill a Terminator unit, and one time he'll go in there and kill the whole unit of Terminators. It just... Things happen. It's just not worth it. I think the points where they're at right now, like, I'm not saying they should go back down to 255. That was a meme. But I do think that with the meta being so much Meltas and anti-vehicle, anti-monster, Catans are probably a thing. It's almost borderline, maybe an 11th edition at this point, because it's not. You can run them. They're not bad. They are a stat check. They will win some matchups against certain armies that can't handle a Catan. But nowadays, every army has enough lethal output or something like that. Like, yeah, no, need some help, 100%.
Yeah, I think, and people just know, like, they know how to handle Satan now, and like their movement, and like good players are just gonna know how to kind of like neutralize that threat for the most part. So
that would be a great need some help right there. If they make their movement 8 inches or 10 inches,
it changes.
Probably 8 inches. Make them 8 inches, or allow the Catans to have like the old Wraith ability of last edition, where they can move through walls or enemy models. They have fly, right? But the fly no longer is what the fly is, right? So if they can move through terrain as if it wasn't there, which I don't see why the Nightbringer shouldn't be able to do that at least, right? Or at least the Deceiver. I would 100% be all for running Catans again, because it's like I don't have a wall stopping me from making a charge into a unit.
Yep, for sure. Well, we're gonna fill up our maybe an 11th edition right here. Poor guy.
Who is that?
You know? He just didn't get a good data sheet. You know, this.
How many points is he? I'm gonna look that up. I think he's like 105 or something like that. Maybe he's 90.
Yeah, that sounds about 100 something. I think that sounds about right.
It's like a Stampa for orcs. No, it's not at all. No, it's only 75 points, but like,
yeah.
Look, go if you want to know about Trazyn, just go read the book. Don't ever actually play him in a game unless you want to have fun with friends. For those who don't know, his ability is that you get sticky objectives if you are on an objective at the end of your command phase, which with Necrons we really don't need, because we have so much OC around the board and so much 4-up invuln. In addition to that, at the start of your command phase, if this model's on the battlefield, you can select 1 infantry character besides a noble or besides an epic character, and you could basically kill that character and put him in that place, right?
Yep.
Why would I want to sacrifice 80
80
points or 85 points, right? Like, of a unit. Why? Especially imagine if that's your list concept, you're playing Purge. Just like, hey, here's instant Purge, good, buddy. If you were my opponent, I would take fixed objectives for the first time in 10th edition, and I would take assassination. Be like, here you go, just don't do it.
Here you go, man. Here you go. Yeah,
he's so funny. We're joking about him. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. 11th edition, man. We'll see what happens. But
good book.
With that said, moving on to the Chronomancer. Some better ones here. Detachment staple. Probably I put him around here-ish. Or maybe he needs some help.
He's looking at me like I need to give approval.
I mean,
hey, look, with 3-inch deep strike going away,
you're not really seeing him though in any list. So it's like I don't know. Maybe he's even lower. No. Like, he's not bad, but he's like, I don't know. Is he really a detachment staple?
Look, he gives the unit -1 to hit, right?
Super good.
you could theoretically run 40 warriors in the Awakened Dynasty list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have one unit with Fire and Fade with a Royal Warden. It's super good. It's -1 to hit. I like him in Hypercrypt because you could run him with a unit of Immortals, like a 5-man Immortal unit, or a 10-man Warrior Brick, just to be a little gimmick. Once a game, you 6-inch Deep Strike and you steal like 2 objectives possibly, right? Because you Fire and Fade onto an objective because now you get to move, I think it's 6 inches, Fade 6 inches. So he has purpose, right? I think he has a lot more purpose than what, like, I don't know. I would rather run him personally more than I would run the Locust Lord, just because the Locust Lord is. I was running Star Shatter. I ran Locust Heavy Destroyers like once because they just die. Everything does 3 damage nowadays, or 4 damage, right? There's a lot of 4 damage, 3 damage, 2 damage, doesn't matter. They all just die, right? I don't know. I like the Chronomancer. I think he's good. He's not as good as Orikan. He's not as good as Orikan. You know who you are out there. He's not as good as Orikan. I don't care what you say. That's a little inside joke. So,
and he's not maybe as good as a plasmancer.
No, not as good as a plasmancer.
I mean, I would put the plasmancer even above.
I put the plasmancer right below the warriors.
Yeah, I think.
You can have him in a lot of different detachments. If you haven't tried a 20-man warrior brick with a plasmancer yet in Hypercrypt,
it's super strong.
It's 20 to 25 wounds, AP -1.
Well, and the thing is too is that with that combo, I think what a lot of people don't realize is like, especially if you're running like a stalker for like ignore cover and they're going up to AP2 with Szeras or something like that. Like, I mean, that unit could just one-shot Angron like every single time, because it's not like, you know, you're handing them like 3 saves at like 4 damage each. You're handing them just little, like, death by 1,000 cuts. It's like the most reliable way to kill any sort of resource ever. And so like having that type of power where you just know with like almost certainty, I just drop this here and it's going to die, is like super strong in any sort of like tournament setting. I see. Okay. Like where I'm looking at this though, as far as detachment staple, is like, are we going to see the plasmancer in more lists than heavy destroyers? That's where I feel like we're going to see more like the tech of like we're talking about, where we could see more units of 2 Imotekh or units of 1 dropping in for like Aeldari and Orktech.
It's hard to say, right? Because it's one of those things where if you're going to put Locust Heavy Destroyers up, then I think you should put Scorpekh or Locust Single Destroyers below Locust Heavy Destroyer, right? Because if you have the points to spend, are you going to spend it on a Locust Destroyer or a Locust Heavy Destroyer? Same size pretty much, but one can come in and wipe an entire infantry unit, right? 4 wounds over 3. Because you're not going to run a full unit of Locust Heavy Destroyers over a Doomsday Ark, I don't think. It's only when it was 150, I agree, you probably do Locust Heavy Destroyers over a Doomsday Ark. But like now that it's 165 for 3, I don't know. That's my thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think going back to the point of like how common, like overall, as far as like with Locust Destroyers, I feel like I'm going to see more of these overall in lists over the next 3 months versus heavy destroyers. Like I'll see more Locust like destroyers at least in a list than Locust heavies.
Because of the points, yeah. Like sometimes you have 35 points. You might not always have 55. That makes sense.
Because like the Locust heavies are going in like almost that bracket of your list where it's like, okay, this is my anti-tank or like mission play, or more like anti-tank piece, even though they're not technically anti-tank, but like some damage piece. And Locusts are specifically like in that like utility scoring category.
Yeah, and like 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers is the price of a Triarch Stalker. And it starts getting into the whole like,
then it gets a little,
have like a Stalker or.
Yeah.
And I would personally rather have a Stalker. So
yeah,
you're right. Plasmancer could probably go maybe even a little bit lower than Catacomb Command Barge. Only reason why is because Catacomb Command Barge benefits a lot of detachments. The plasmancer truly is just a huge benefit for hypercrypt with the warrior brick. And besides that, like I really don't run it in much else.
I think personally, people are going to try to see more combos with the command barge, especially with the strength of Star Shatter now. We got him back. We got him back, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you going to be able to like fix that on the the after product?
I don't know. No, I'm not sure exactly why it's like it's timing you out. I don't know if it's something with the I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that afterwards because I was talking about Catacomb Command Barge. I see more common in lists, specifically Star Shatter. I think because with the King being, quote unquote unkillable, but I would say the era of him being unkillable right now is kind of over. So I think you might see more people try to lean into some sort of Catacomb Command Barge combo.
Yeah,
in Star Shatter, so you might see him pop up more too. But,
I agree. Yeah.
Orikan, man, or Orikan.
I think he should go with Fun with Friends. You should never run him.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely.
No one should ever use Orikan.
Not good,
man. I think a lot of people that play against Necrons probably agree with this. Should never run Orikan.
Yeah,
should be banned.
we're here to tell you. Probably.
I love Orikan. He's my favorite model. Favorite unit. Yeah. You run him with warriors and hypercrypt, you have a brick that can't die. You run him in a unit with warriors and awaken, you have a unit that can't die. Yeah. And if you run warriors, you run Orikan. I would rather run warriors with Orikan than run warriors with plasmancer if I had to, because it's a 4-up in bone and a bunch of it's hard to rip through all those models.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, he's solid. I mean, I'm running him this weekend, so if that tells you anything, I mean, that's he's good. He's good.
He is so good. Way better than the Chronomancer.
What's up?
Way better than the Chronomancer.
Yeah, I think right now for sure. Yeah. The Psychomancer? Probably man, there might be some people that come after us for this one, man. But,
I think his name is Walter, right?
Yeah. No, I love the guy. Never met him in
had,
person yet, but he is an avid watcher of the channel.
So I met him. I met him at a team event in Valdosta last year, and he actually ran that idea by me at he was like, "Hey, what? I've been theory crafting, this."
Because he was running like double, right? Double, I think. Yeah.
He was, and I when he was talking to me about it at the Valdosta tournament, I was just like, "This is, I could see it." And I really hate Tyranids. I hate Battleshock. Battleshock is a stupid mechanic, but it's such a funny good for him because he made it work. I think he was 6th at Warzone or something like that. He did really good.
Mm-hmm.
He's also just a really good player. I've seen him at several events. He's always been really good. I think Fun with Friends, unless you're the person, unless you're him, right?
Yeah, we're just gonna say unless you're Walter.
There are units that people run that work for them, right? Always find that one unit that you like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a great example is when he won LVO with the Monolith and Immortals, right?
Mm-hmm. At
ATC events, I was running the Monolith with Warriors, and I always got asked, this is right after this all happened, they were always like, why are you running Warriors and Immortals? And I just had to, without trying to sound condescending, I'll just be like, you'll see. I'm not going to tell you before I play you, why, right? And by the end of the game, they're always like, oh, I see, right? Because I personally had played with Warriors for so much, I like Warriors more. He likes Psychomancers, and it works really well for him. You're playing with friends, it's really funny, right? Doubles event, you can run them with Tyranids and be super spicy and really annoying to your opponent. It's just one of those things where if you like a unit, you run them. Who cares, right? Just run what you like. So
cool tech piece, and catch some people off guard, not in a gotcha sort of way, but it's they just don't know exactly what you're trying to pull off with a combo, So
I promise you, at this point in 10th edition, with it being 2 years in, if you bring that to a tournament and you get to the table, that will be probably the one model nowadays that people will be like, "What is that?"
They would have no idea or what it does. Yeah. For sure. Ghost Arc, probably right around here-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's super useful for Awaken. It probably goes towards like kind of where the Monolith's at. It's kind of like the Monolith and Awaken, if you think about it, right? If you're gonna run the 20-man,
Yeah, I guess that's true. Depending on what your build is, yeah.
Like
yeah.
you're not gonna run. There's no reason to run the Ghost Arc in anything that doesn't have the Warrior, right? Like,
yeah.
You're not. I just don't see the purpose of it, right? You could run in Hypercrypt and have that Reaper brick with the Plasmancer do really good, but it's just kind of like, hey, here's 1,000 points going into one warrior bird that can't die, and that's kind of the biggest staple of that unit. So,
Yep.
100%.
I agree. Doomsday Arc, yeah. I mean, they went up 10 points, but they're still super strong. Yeah. I mean, they're.
Do we see a list without it? Like, I know you've been running it without it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, this is the beautiful part about Warhammer, just different opinions. I personally don't like D6 shots in tournaments, and it just terrorizes me. So I go a different route in terms of my damage. But if we're specifically talking Star Shatter, I mean, they're still going to be in every list. Awaken, they're still probably going to be in most lists. I mean, they're our best anti-tank shooting platform out there, and they're durable. They shoot hard. I mean, for the most part, they're very reliable. You can always spend a CP and re-roll the shots if you really need to. And especially if you have the king.
And 201 every time.
Yeah, every time. Every time. But yeah, I mean, I would even rank. I mean, I don't even personally run them, but like I would even rank them above Locust Destroyers because I think you're just going to see them pretty much even more common than that unit, probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to add. Tank Busters are 24 inches range. Doomsday Arcs are range, right? So usually you get to hit everything. But again, it goes into the whole, there's too much 4-up invuln in the game nowadays, where the whole purpose of a Doomsday Arc, like in my list, isn't to really kill you. It's to say, hey, at one point, I could do 20 wounds to you.
Exactly.
When in reality, I might do 0. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's like, I'm not going to do really anything to you. This tournament at Onslaught, I didn't do anything with it. It didn't do anything. It kept them from moving forward too fast in some games, but like, I think in every game I lost both of them. So, yeah, rest in peace, Doomsday Arcs. But they are very good. 200 points is what they should have been anyways. So no one should be upset that they went to one. They were 190, went to 200. That's what they should have been.
And the Gosflare array is great at killing Gretchen, great at killing Eldar. So there's that too. So, Doomstalkers I think are just kind of in the need some help category right now.
They're too expensive.
Yeah, and I like Canoptic is interesting, but I don't know. They're kind of just in this weird spot. Like their data sheet isn't necessarily bad, but yeah, they just need to be like less, the cost less for what it is,
I think if their Overwatch was kind of like Hexmark, where it's like you could Overwatch once for free or whatever, like give it the 5s and 6s and free Overwatch, because I'm not gonna burn CP to Overwatch from 5s and 6s.
Can you imagine if they had like a once per game, like they can Overwatch like on a 3+ or something? Like
that'd be good. They went up in points with Canoptic Court when Canoptic Court was at its best, and they never actually brought it back down. They no longer have 12-inch lone op strat available to them. It's a Doomsday Arc, but hits less. So you're not gonna run anything that's not. Like I would never change my Doomsday Arcs for Doomstalkers just to fit an extra, what is that, 900 points, like 80 points or something like that. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Ophidians.
I love Ophidians.
I maybe like around here.
I would put them above the Plasmancer personally. I think that if your army doesn't have a lot of mobility, right? Like especially with Hypercrypt going down in one unit for Hyperphase, it allows you to have Ophidians be that fourth unit again without having to burn points with other stuff.
I think they're finally at a point cost this whole edition where they are a good choice to take in the right. Like if the points work out right. And they feel it because what I do love about the unit, similar to like Mandrakes or something like in Drakari, where they're doing like double duty roles, which is always like super value. Where You know, if you have a lot of forward presence in your list, they're just a great back screen holder. It's just like we were talking with Scarabs earlier because they're all on. Actually, I think Ophidians, are they on 50 mils? I think they might be on 50 mils, so even better. But 40 or 50 mils. And so they take up a while.
Size as a Scorpekh destroyer, I'm pretty sure. So
okay, so yeah, so I think 50 mils. But yeah, they just take up a lot of space in your backfield to screen, which is just super important in this game because again, about scoring points. You know, you're looking to deny behind enemy lines, locus, all that good stuff, and then it's just super clutch in the late game, especially if you're going bottom of turn. You draw that sabotage, you draw that recover, and all of a sudden you turn a 3-point card into 6 because you can just drop those in the backfield and like, boop, I got my 3 units, I'm good. So they serve a lot of purposes. I think 80 points is attractive. I don't think they could probably ever go down to 70 or 75. I think that gets a little bit too cheap. But I mean, they were like 100, I think, at the start of the edition, like
their
95 or something.
Counts for it. Like their rule is really good.
It's really good. Yeah, it's very strong.
It's like at any given time, I can score 8 points in one turn just because, like a lot, like especially for orcs, right, being the new meta.
Yeah.
Things are going to move forward. They're going to leave spots in the backfield, right? It's why the Hexmark with the Veil of Darkness is such a funny gimmick, because at any given point, it will actually score you like 8 points, because now you have a unit in their backfield, behind enemy lines, and established locus. Boom, there you go. And if they die, they die. But guess what? If they die, that means that orcs are turning around to go kill them, right? And that's where you kind of like start to win the game against orcs. You have to turn around, or world eaters, stuff like that.
Yeah,
100% I agree with you. They are super good. Not needed in every list because some units just have the same and you don't have as much points to give, but yeah.
The Scorpekh, man. You know, I love my Scorpekh. Love me some Scorpekh right now.
I have to agree with you finally, unfortunately.
I mean,
look,
the thing is, y'all, like, for 90 points, you get 12 attacks, rerolling hits on the charge, strength 7, AP 2, 2 damage with dev wounds. Like, it's great. Now, are they glass cannons? Yes. Are they very susceptible to Overwatch? Absolutely. But if you get enough reps with them, you know kind of how to position them, you can really get a lot of value out of those units, especially because they move 8, which is a huge help as well. They're a little bit faster, so their threat range is a little bit longer since we don't have a lot of access to advance and charge in most attachments. So I'm real high on the Scorpekh. I think you're going to be seeing them a lot in definitely, I think, Awakened. Star Shatter, a little bit, maybe like 1 unit I could see, probably not 2. Yeah. Hypercrypt, not really so much, but mainly Star Shatter and Awaken.
Yeah, I think if the Monolith and Hypercrypt allowed things to come out of it and charge, especially now that it's 6 inches, right?
If the Monolith could drop in and then charge out, like.
Also, by now the Codex has been out for a while, so if people are still playing against you and they're deep striking the Monolith and then charging out of it the same turn, they're not playing it right. They should read the rule.
Can't be doing that. Can't be doing
that. But if they allowed that for that detachment, I could see Scorpekh and Hypercrypt every time. I do think like 1 3-man in Awaken is just a good little like, hey, I can do this if you come close, so just keep out 8 inches plus my charge length, right? It's a good little, hey, I have a 20-inch threat range. Am I gonna roll box cars on a charge? Probably not, but
good. Whoa.
I'm with friends. I agree.
I'll tell you right now. Heck no. Okay. All right. Mr. Scorpekh Lord himself. I mean, I won't put him above. Nah, I mean, oof.
No, in front of Scorpekh. Like, I would rather run a Scorpekh Lord than Scorpekh.
Yeah. Hands down. This guy right now in the current meta is so freaking good. In Awaken, it is like a no-brainer. Having at least 1 with the bond, my personal opinion, it's so strong and so many reps I've played recently. Like, I mean, the guy can literally, I mean, he's a mini Szeras that arguably does more damage. You spend a CP to bring him back. He solves a lot of problems with the Daka detachment because you can run them detached, and there's a good little, I don't want to say like counter, but it puts them in a little bit of a tricky spot because you can just run him out. You're like, hey, do you want to overwatch him? Yes. Cool, I bring him back. Oh, you don't want to overwatch him? Cool, I charge, and best case, I kill your unit. Worst case, I don't kill your unit, and then you fall back and still can't shoot. And I'm only doing that for 80 points. Like, I'll take that all day. So,
I forget he shoots. I haven't ran him yet. Right?
dude, I play. I mean, 4
sorry.
shots. 4 shots, 611, 12-inch range with rapid fire, hitting on 2s. Like, the guy, I mean, T7, which is just a great break point. A lot of things in the game, man, he's just great.
I think I've played him with like one list in the last year, so I forgot what he does. But I will be saying that I have finally joined the Scorpekh train.
We're getting Daniel on the Scorpekh lore. Dude, Walter's gonna be so proud of you, man.
Does Walter run Scorpechs? Look, I am gonna miss the Catans, but after this last event, I'm done running them out of love. The Scorpekh, here's how it works. You have a Catan who's hard to kill and a 4-up invul and 5-up final pain. But then you have something that has half the cost with Illuminor. Doesn't hit as hard, you're right, but just doesn't die, right? Which is what Necrons really should be, right? Like, in my opinion, if I'm running Necrons, I'm running something that's going to be able to score good, right? Super good team army, because you can always score pretty high, right?
Yep.
And then Scorpekh Lord is a little bit less of a threat, in my opinion, than the Illuminor, right?
Yeah.
But not really, right? A little bit less toughness, a couple less wounds.
Different ways. I mean, the Scorpekh hits harder in combat, but like they're arguably the same, because like Szeras is lone op, and then he's got a little better shooting.
His aura for your army though is a little bit better. Yeah. Both are really good. I personally am going to run that. I personally just need to work on not letting Illuminor and the Scorpekh Lord die at the same phase. That's it.
Yeah. It's easy.
That will hurt everybody. If you do that, if you let that happen, you will cry.
Yep. So. Yep. Definitely got to stage them one at a time. But and then speaking of which, Mr. Szeras himself.
All right.
I mean, he's going to be even higher than the Scorpekh Lord, as much as I love him. But I mean, I
think, and you're probably not going to agree with this, I think he goes to every list. I think with the death of Catans, I would put him in every list. There's not a detachment. I don't think Illuminor has some form of a purpose. He is still a 2-up, 4-up, 4-up, right? If you're running the Overlord attachment, right, you're probably still going to run Immortals, because you can run the Immortals with a Plasmancer and Overlord for all rerolls, all that jazz. You can do that in the Overlord attachment. Awaken, he helps you with the Warrior Brick. He is such a big point for that Warrior Brick. He can get your warriors to a 3-up save against most AP -1 and below. Comes back to life, right? Like, if he's not in every list, I think he is number 1 in front of the Doomsday arc, because he is the new Catan, just not as killy, but half the points. I think he's honestly, in my opinion, the best unit in our codex. And I mean that. I think he's the best unit.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah, I mean, people have nightmares about this single model. I mean, you know, his data sheet is phenomenal. He's I personally think he's probably undercosted. I was actually surprised he didn't go up maybe a little bit, to be honest.
Yes.
But he solves a lot of problems, especially in Awaken. It just synergizes with the game plan so well, where they just have to, like we talked about the Stalker being hard to kill, but they just have to commit so many resources, not only to him, but they have to get up close, which is what you want anyway, to give better value to your other units in your list. But every list, okay, here's the thing. Star Shatter, though.
Yeah, I would. He's a 4-up, 4-up. Like, you have to realize, right? So like, I played in Custodes, and he put a unit of bikes. He had 2 units of bikes shoot him with it's basically D6 +1 damage, strength 10 guns.
Mm-hmm.
And then charged into me with bikes and Terminators, and did not kill Illuminor. Through shooting and combat, he left me down with 3 wounds. All right. Now, keep in mind, right, rolling, I could roll all 1s just as much as I could roll all 6s, right? But
yeah,
if he's, I hear you, maybe not every list, but I do think that I do think that if you run Awakened, especially in Awakened, I think is probably the best attachment right now. I know Star Shatter, everyone's running it right now. I think it's mostly just because it's the newest thing, right? And the +1 to hit does help. But with Star Shatter being so tank heavy and the meta going towards or being just killing tanks, right? Illuminor being able to just not die, and then when he finally does come back with 5 wounds, Guilliman is 300 something points, gets to come back on a 3-up, and comes back with 6 wounds. All right. Now keep in mind, Guilliman does a lot for the Ultramarines.
Yeah.
Illuminor has a feel no pain that Guilliman doesn't have, comes back with 5 wounds, and then heals up to 8. And then you can just run him behind a wall, because guess what? Infantry, he can hide. You can run him back into your Ghost Ark. Oh, that's the other thing too. Fit him in a Ghost Ark. Why not? It's funny, right? I don't know. That's just my opinion. It doesn't have to go in every list. I do think that, you know,
I think he's
definitely the best model, and he's the best unit in our codex, in my opinion, because of his point cost and because of what he can do.
Yeah. I could see him right there. I could be convinced.
I will also say one other thing that makes him so good over other armies is the big nerf to Armor of Contempt for every other army. Being 1 unit gets to have this for 1 activation. I have to explain it to everybody I play against as an aura, so it just always has it, right? And that's another reason why I will have him. I maybe I spoke too fanboy to have him in every list. Especially when the next thing we talk about is going to be in every list. But yeah, I am a firm believer. He is the best, and I hope that one day I will get you to trust in Illuminor as you have gotten me to trust in the Scorpekh Lord.
He's good. I mean, I'm running him this weekend too, so you know I can't knock it. Can't knock it. Now the old Tomb Blades, man. I love me some Tomb Blades, although I'm personally not running them right now, but. I mean, oof. I mean,
oh, you're breaking my heart.
Okay, again, I'm thinking about it like detachments. Okay, how often? They're definitely a staple. Like, how are we going to see them in more lists than a barge?
You should see Tomb Blades in every list. Here's my thing: the 4 things that I'm going to have in every. And keep in mind, I am not the same player as you. Or Walter, or everyone else, right? But when I make my list, I think of scoring first and then everything else second, right? Tomb Blades, here's the deal. What are we worried about? Imperial Knights and Orcs are the main 2 things, right? And you can add Eldar in there too, all right? Well, with Orcs and Imperial Knights, if you go first and you have 1 unit of 3 or 2 units of 3 of Tomb Blades, guess what? They're not moving nowhere, because now you're going to move those Tomb Blades up with Scout. You're going to advance and shoot, and you're going to block all the Orc tanks in their deployment zone turn 1. And now that it's been an entire turn shooting those dudes, possibly not even with their tanks, because their tanks can't really shoot, they're going to have to shoot them with units. Players are going to have to get out of their tanks and probably shoot them. Well, now you have them out of their tanks. Now you shoot the unit, right? They're also they're the only unit in our list besides Ophidians that can score behind enemy lines and establish locus in the deployment zone turn 1 if you go first.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe not establish locus always. You can on search and destroy because you can scout within 9 inches of your opponent's deployment zone. That's a new rule. But besides that, they are the only unit most likely you can get behind enemy lines at least. Right? So this is my thought process. But
so you probably, I mean, maybe they're kind of like in the stalker category.
I would put them in front of stalkers just because they're cheaper. And because stalkers are a lot bigger of a footprint, you can hide blades.
Yeah. I mean, I really do like Tomb Blades. I mean, they fulfill so many different roles in so many different ways that you can use them in matchups, which I think is good. Yeah. And I think, I mean, they are really good into Eldar and Orcs right now, where you can get a lot of value out of them early, which is kind of nice because you can cut those early angles with stuff. But so yeah, I like it.
Something else people don't think about is if you have like particle beamers and stuff, you can move out, shoot some ludas, and move right back in. Don't worry about anything.
Yeah,
and they pick up some ludas.
Yeah, it's true. That's a very good point. Wraiths are interesting. This is something we were actually talking about even before we started this, and
this is all you.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's tough to say where. And the thing is, we don't have like a ton of information yet as far as like how Doc is gonna be and Eldar once everything kind of matures and settles down a little bit. But I am not super high on race right now, which is like the amount of damage output. I think there's still gonna be a staple for sure. But it's like if we're talking about Awakened, I would rather run Warriors. If we're talking about Hypercrypt, I would rather run Warriors. And so when I'm answering that question, I would put them lower than Warriors, and I think you're going to see these units above them. Maybe not. Maybe like here.
They're not bad. They win you the
They're
game
not
against
bad.
Eldar.
It's like...
They do die to orcs very easily.
Yeah.
Warriors don't. Ludas kill 2 thralls and up to 8 warriors, I believe is the math. They kill a lot of wraiths.
Yeah.
It's all 2 damage.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, but I think it could be a rough season right now. We're going into for the race, at least in a GT tournament setting. But hey, we could totally be proven wrong. That's the best part.
Also, the cost difference too, right? If you run 20 warriors with Orikan, it's I believe cheaper than a 6-man wraith unit and the Chronomancer.
Yeah,
I think.
But
or at least
I mean, to make that whole package work how you want it to, the rates are going to definitely end up cheaper. But
it's true. This is true.
But the barge,
fun with friends.
Yeah,
I don't even know what it does. Honestly, I really don't. Do you know what it does?
I mean, I think it's like 5/2/2, like 6 attacks. I feel bad because like there was a list I was running like Tacoma last year. He had like 2 or 3 of them. He actually did pretty well. I feel bad. I mean, if he's watching the channel, comment below. But I
think
he did pretty well. I think. But as far as right now, I mean, I don't know, man. It's just not a stellar data sheet from when I've looked at it. It's so stellar that I don't remember it off the top of my head. But
before I look, I believe his rule is what 7th edition Imotekh did, where you shoot something and then everything within range takes like a lightning bolt thing.
Yeah, something like that.
In your shooting phase, each time you select a target for this model's twin Tesla destructor, roll a d6, and on a d6 for every enemy unit within 3 inches of the target on a 5-up, that unit is struck and can suffer d3 mortal wounds. So, yeah, I mean, if you run 3 of them, right? I don't think they're too highly costed. You run 3 of them, you could do up to like 9 mortal wounds to every unit within 3 inches of the unit you shoot, which is really good if you're playing against like guard, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 5-up. it's like all right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to, man. He's got to.
Do you think that it is harder for them to kill the Silent King? You played Orcs recently, and you had the Silent King die, and you also had illuminor on the list, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it was harder for them to kill Silent King or harder to kill illuminor?
Well, here's the thing. Like, Szeras, he has the rules for defensive stuff. But if we're talking about, like, we're balancing out damage, I mean, like, if we're comparing, like, which one just slaps, it's going to be the king. If we're talking about survivability, Szeras is going to win that hands down. But,
and what he does for the army, right?
Yeah. I think for right now, here's why I would say I think the king is higher for Szeras when we're talking about detachment staple. Yes, you're going to see him primarily, like Phalanx, obviously you're running him, he's automatic. Hypercrypt, I would personally say he's probably automatic just because we already know Hypercrypt has a damage problem, and the king is like the one way to solve that, whether you want to run T-Volts or you want to run Monoliths for the rerolls. So you're basically going to see him in every... I don't see a reason not to run him in a Hypercrypt. The only 2 detachments I could see there's an argument of not running him is Awakened and Star Shatter. I think especially in Star Shatter, just because I think it's going to get a little tricky with Eldar, and because you still want to run 2 arks, 2 or 3 arks in Star Shatter, and it's just trying to figure out the right balance of having enough points and scoring and all that good stuff. But in Awaken, I am super, super high on the King. And this is where, like, Daniel, he likes having the arcs in Awaken right now, which I think, is cool too. I am just terrified of Battle Shock, and I think we're running into a lot of problems right now with CSM, with NIDS, and everything else. I've been telling Daniel, I'm like, in a tournament, I just don't want to worry about it. I just want to press a button. I'm like, yep, ignore mods. I don't care if I'm... Because the thing with okay, here's the other thing with came up the other night, is with ignore mods too, you're seeing there's these new CSM combos coming out where, like, they're also stacking a ton of minuses on the warriors. So now, not only are you saying, like, hey, I ignore mods, I'm going to be OC2, but also you want to stack all these minuses? I don't care. I'm still leadership 5. Let me just pass these and cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I told you about my Nightbringer against Tyranids. He made me take a Battle Shock on turn 3 at -2 leadership. Now, to be fair, the Silent King would not have been near the Nightbringer. Well, you can't run both really in the warrior list. It's not possible.
Yeah, there's not a way to do it really.
But I failed my leadership. I had 6 wounds. It's a beautiful half-living Nightbringer, and I had a desperate escape. And I rolled a 2. So he died.
Yep, been there.
Yeah. Now I will say though, against my Silent King, 100%. I think that if you want to run a good vehicle that doesn't die very easily and can he kills Space Marines, he kills boys, he kills anything that's 2 wounds super easily, right? And can kill a vehicle with his 6 damage meter, right? I do. The points is a problem. I think that he's super expensive. I wish he was like back down to like, I think last edition he was like 375, or if I remember right. Super expensive. His aura of benefits is kind of good. I do wish that he always got ignore mods, kind of like Mortarion for Death Guard, right? That would be super good. And I think that with how tank busts are truly like 16 of them or 18 of them, right? I played against Mark Perry in the last round in the tournament a couple months ago. He killed 1,000 points on my list with not Daka, but the other new one.
Yeah,
it's just something where it's like, hey, orcs are just so scary right now. They want you dead. They're gonna kill you. I don't think the Silent King doesn't have fly, right? No fly, the Silent King.
No, believe it or not, yeah, he's just he's a vehicle. I don't even know if he has. I don't think he has. No, he doesn't have the mounted keyword. So yeah, he's just a vehicle.
That's another problem you might have is, and I promise you, people probably are going to be looking at their phones, saying like, no fly, because I feel like there's probably times where people fly him over their vehicles, thinking that they have fly. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. You would think he has fly. Why not, right?
Yeah, which is nice for any anti-fly keywords, though.
It is 100%, right? It is 100% great. But it's another one of those things where I think that he's such a big model too, where he can get kind of stuck.
Yeah, you have to play. I mean, he, like with any big model, he's one in particular where it does take a lot, I think, of reps to get practice in how to really maximize his value and seeing different matchups. Because he is a big model, and especially against good players, it's very easy to screw that up. I mean, my perfect example, the recent battle report, if you guys haven't seen it, played against Daka last weekend, and I got a little too excited, and it was so funny. I thought about this move for like 2 minutes, and I think in my gut, I just knew it was a bad move, and I did it anyway, and then sure enough, he draws Bring It Down next turn, and yep, there we go. So, it does depend. I think you have to run a very specific type of Awaken list for it to make sense to run him. It's worked really well in mine so far, but I think outside of that, I don't necessarily think it would be a good idea, but I think, in Hypercrypt, you're going to basically see him in every list. Star Shatter is still going to be in most lists. He's just a great all around piece. Like he's still super strong, I think, going into this next season of competitive 40K.
Great staple. Yeah. I do like the idea of him and Illuminor. Honestly, you could run them both. Like, why not, right? Run him and Illuminor, and you're set. Right? Yep. You're good to go.
So.
Yep. Mr. Technomancer.
I think he needs help.
I think he needs help.
It's too expensive. And would you run him in any other attachment but Canopticort? I guess put him next to the Monolith, because the Monolith and the Ghost Ark are also kind of like attachment eccentric, right?
But the thing is, like, you're not running a Technomancer without Race.
You're right.
And you're not running Race without Technomancer.
Yeah.
Like, they're one of the same. I would agree that he's a little too expensive. But I mean, he's still really good. And I think if you run Race, if you see lists with Race, you're gonna have a Technomancer.
Don't run him with Warriors because he gives them the fly keyword, and then it just gets your Warriors killed.
Yeah. From
a lot of anti-fly stuff. That's what I've experienced. Yeah. But for Race, yeah, he does make them super buffy. Yeah. A lot of people are still high on Race, but
Reanimator.
Ooh.
I
think they go by the Warriors. If you have Warriors and Awaken, you run the Reanimator 1000%. But then he also has purpose, like in Star Shatter, you can.
Yeah, in Star Shatter. Maybe for Hypercrypt a little bit.
It's more of a gimmick in Hypercrypt because you can go 4-up Invul and 4-up Final Pain.
Yeah. Spider also probably around here.
God, did I miss him?
I know. He's I don't know if you see him more than like the barge though.
I wonder if we see him more with the orc shooting with your vehicles, because he does give your vehicles a 6-up Final Pain, and it kind of messes with the math a little bit. Where now your Triarch Stalkers don't have 12 wounds, they really have 14, right? Your Silent King, right? If you're running the Silent King in Awaken or especially in Star Shatter, if you run the Silent King in Star Shatter, you should probably run the Spider because it gives you an extra wound for everything.
So much value, yeah. I think it just depends on, I think, like I look at him as more of like an accessory to more of like a foundational piece, where like the barge and some of these other ones are like foundational pieces versus like the Spider, he kind of complements one of those foundational pieces. So
yeah, Thousand Suns isn't like big. Like they're good. Thousand Suns is really good, but they're not like super big. And their flamers and stuff aren't actually psychic, so like you don't really.
And Grey Knights, I feel like aren't going to be super common in the meta coming up, especially with the new Purge change. I mean, I think they got kind of hit a little.
It does. I think an auto win against Grey Knights though. Not an auto win, like there's still skill involved.
In a 5-up on psychic attacks, you're just like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, like it's really good. For those who Convergence of Dominion, if you can't run Convergence of Dominion for any reason, the Spider's a good little trade.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's a good point, actually, too. Praetorians, I try to make these guys work for a little bit, and they're still kind of in the same category of they just kind of need some help right now. I think they could be good.
Can they be led?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say like maybe in 11th edition, but
I feel like people have lost trust in GW making them good for 10th edition. Like, what would they have to like?
I mean, honestly, like if they went down to like 80 points, then they get kind of interesting.
They can't even declare, so they can only,
because what I would use them for is like they're a deep strike, like rapid ingress threat.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, like in the early game, because they do have a lot of attacks. Like I was trying to make them work in Star Shatter when we had the 1 CP plus 1 to wound, because then all of a sudden you're charging in with 15 attacks. That's we lost him, man. Well, we'll figure this out on the next layer. He's coming back. There he comes back. But yeah, you get 15 attacks with the Praetorians. You're hitting on 2s. And then you could use the 1 CP for them to wound on 2s because they're strength 5. So most things in the game, you're going to be able to wound on 2s, if not 3s. So that part was like super strong. So until he comes back, we'll keep this going here. So we have the Crypto Thralls, and I would put them right next to the warriors. He's back here. Boom. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. He's back.
Yeah.
No, I kept it moving, but sorry, Praetorians.
No, you're good.
Any, you're good.
Praetorians. No.
Yeah, so I think they need some help. I mean they're not a bad data sheet. I think it would just take like a points drop, and then potentially if they were to roll back one of the changes to the Star Shatter, like the +1 to wound thing, I think they could be interesting, like on a rapid ingress deep strike threat against, because like early game they could hit on 2s, wound on 2s with 15 attacks, and they move 10.
I think that the one thing that they could use, so they're eligible to make a charge on a turn that they fell back, right?
Yeah.
If they gave them the ability to advance and charge, I would run a 5-man in a lot of lists, because it's just one thing that you could have behind a wall, move 10, advance, so you have like a max of, what is that, 28-inch threat range, right? Where if it's like, what are they, 85 points for a unit of 5, right? Something like
no,
that.
they're 100 points right now.
So 100 points for unit 5, but it's like something where you could trade 100 for, like, if they have something, if they have a 100-point unit of infantry on an objective, they might be able to kill it in one go, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
give it advance and charge, and I would run them.
I put Crypto Thralls right next to Warriors because kind of same thing as a Technomancer. You're not really running Crypto Thralls without Warriors. But Crypto Thralls higher than Wraiths just because they can go in either or. But I think right now, I think you're going to see them a lot more just because I think Warriors have a lot of play in this meta, and I think the only way to keep Wraiths alive is running Crypto Thralls with Wraiths. So
yeah, and they do actually give you the ability to, for Call the Horde, they make your Wraith brick the
that
Call
too,
the Horde
super
legal,
good,
which is super good. And I can't tell you how many times I had my Warrior brick. The Warrior brick does die. Like, I hope everyone understands that. But there's a couple of times where I'm down to like 2 Warriors only because the Crypto Thralls did their job and took 12 of the wounds away on a 3-up save. So,
yep. Immortals. I mean, I would probably
run 5 Immortals or run Warriors.
Yeah, I don't know. I would probably put them right around there ish.
Or
do they need
run them?
I mean, they don't really need some. I don't know. They're kind of almost like in the need some help category.
I agree. I think they need 2 wounds. I don't understand why they're not 2 wounds.
I mean, I would put them higher than the Stalker, but like their data sheet isn't necessarily bad, but I think right now they're just it's hard just to figure out a way to make that unit work. Pending if we get a Silvertide detachment in June. I know nothing, but if like they're doing this whole new detachment thing and we get some sort of Silvertide detachment, I mean,
they're not giving us Silvertide. Yeah, I guarantee they saw the hate in chat from people streaming with Warrior bricks on in tournaments. Sorry. They're not giving us a silver. There's no way. They're going to be like, no, you guys have Awaken. That's all you guys get. Could you imagine they make it like Warriors can't have benefits of Blast? Like no one gets benefit of Blast in the Warriors.
Or it's just like, I don't know, like they do something specifically just with Battle Line where it's like you get +1 strength, +1 AP or something like that for Battle Line units. Or +1 OC. Like maybe it's not necessarily like a reanimation thing, but it just makes these units like hit a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Like damage wise.
Play. I think especially with the orcs being the meta, a unit of 5 Tesla Immortals with like the Plasmancer or even a unit of 10, a cool little thing I'm thinking is a 10-man Immortal unit with a Chronomancer with illuminor and Awaken. Pop out, you shoot an entire unit of Ludas, and then you fall back into your terrain. And you're good.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they definitely need some help.
Obelisk.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think maybe in 11th edition, honestly.
Yeah, actually, yeah, you're probably right.
No one's running that. Not even Walter. Walter's not even running that. This got no play.
It's a sign. It's a sign, guys.
It's a sign.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it could go at the bottom of here, but I feel like it's.
Which one is that? Is that the Night Scythe or is that the?
I think they were drew them all together. I don't think they have both of them, so we'll just. I mean, Night Scythe, Doom Scythe. It's
I think needs help, right?
Yeah.
Here's what I would do, just like the Praetorians, if they gave them advance in charge, if they gave Doomsize the ability, like Storm Ravens, to have come into the game in hover mode, so you don't have to get shot off the table, right? I would run them. They also are 235 points when you could run a Doomsday Arc, and your opponent gets to choose which one they take to get affected by, and they're never going to take the sustained on 5s and 6s. So,
yeah. I mean, I think that pretty much concludes the list. I mean, there's a couple left out. Transcendent Satan would be right here. Lychguard would be right here as well, probably in like well, I mean, maybe bottom of detachment staple, because you're going to see them like in phalanx.
Is there anything in this that you would change, like personally, that you think? From what you have seen, because keep in mind we have different metas, right? Like you have a meta up there in the northwest, I have a meta down here in the southeast.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I mean, I might switch this and this around.
I could see it. I like the idea of Doomsday Arcs and the Silent King and Hypercrypt, Awaken, Star Shatter. That combo is good in almost every detachment, probably besides like Canoptic Court.
Yeah, I feel like I would switch those two around, and then I don't know. I think everything else looks pretty good. I mean, you're not running Crypto Thralls without Warriors, you're not running Techno without Wraiths, Phidians. You have these support pieces here. I think the Imotekh Heavy Destroyers and anti-tank ones, you're going to see a little bit more play, probably compared to last season. Yeah, I mean, Satan in a rough spot. I think just in general right now, maybe it's one of our hot takes, but I don't know. I don't know. Rough spot.
I don't think we're really running them.
I don't know. You see anything?
No, I mean, I think it all looks good. The Tesseract Vault, I don't think is getting enough love. I would put the Tesseract Vault above some of those things. I do think that it has play in more than just Hypercrypt, but in Hypercrypt, I think it's at its deadliest, if that makes sense.
Like you can see it even like Star Shatter?
Well, here's the deal, right? If I'm running the Silent King and Doomsday Arcs in Hypercrypt, I'm not running the Monolith. I'm going to run Tesseract Vault.
Yeah.
So that's a great combo. I've done it before. It works really well. Yeah, that's about it. Everything else seems pretty good. I do think that if you're going to be in the competitive scene and you want to win games, the Hexmark, Flayed ones, and Scarabs, you know what? The Locust, the Locust Destroyer, you could probably put up there too, and then have it fight for placement between it and the Scarab, depending on how many points you have. If you have 5 points, I would take Scarabs. If you don't, you take the Locust Destroyer. Those should be the 4 things that you run in your list to start off with. Everything else is just preference. If you like Race, you run the Race combo. If you like Warriors, you run the Warrior combo. If you like the Silent King, you run the Silent King, and anything else you want to. So,
yep. Yeah, so I mean, this about sums it up, y'all. If you stayed around this long, seriously appreciate you watching, but this is what we think is going to be more or less the competitive tiers over the next couple months until we get the new update probably in June or July, where I believe we'll get like a mission update as well, which will be pretty hype. So excited to see that. But yeah, comment below. Let me know if you disagree with any of our takes, or for the most part, this lines up with what you thought as well. And yeah, we will catch you on the next one. Peace, y'all.